As we explore the severe reality of human evil, especially in attacks on innocence and the perversion of moral or divine authority, we must confront uncomfortable truths head-on. Only by facing harsh realities without censoring or softening them, can we deepen our fear of God, our reverence for His work, and refine our moral compass. In this lecture, we will present specific illustrations, including frank references to alleged pagan elements in Islam, inter-Christian condemnation, and militant atheism, while emphasizing the universal problem of arrogance and intolerance in the human condition. Remember, we need to reflect first, then project. Cain's resentment and the destruction of innocence, expanded. 1. The Genesis account of murderous envy. In the book of Genesis, Cain, consumed by envy and bitterness, murders his brother Abel. Rather than face his own failures, he blames God and the world, refusing to learn, adapt, or reflect. By complaining and projecting, Cain effectively aims down, lashing out at moral goodness itself. In striking an innocent life, he defies the moral order, demonstrating how evil can become a conscious rebellion against the sacred. Genesis 4:3-8. 2. Iniquity as a choice of deeper and deeper corruption. Iniquity doesn't merely mean stealing out of need or greed. It's like burning stolen property out of sheer spite. It's an intentional act of defilement, especially heinous when directed against children, the most defenseless of all. This deliberate descent can begin with relatively mild wrongdoing, like dabbling in certain forms of pornography for a quick thrill, yet quickly escalates. Research shows that over time, individuals may move from legal to illegal materials, driven by desensitization, or the search for more extreme stimuli. See, Fight the New Drug article on escalation, how porn can become an escalating behavior. The same escalation applies to violence. A person might fantasize about extreme brutality for thousands of hours before actually committing it. Studies show that certain perpetrators of mass violence, including school shootings, planned extensively in advance. National Institute of Justice Pre-Attack Warning Behaviors of School Shooters 2018. 3. The Sandy Hook Parallel and Extreme Depravity. The 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting stands out as a stark example of targeting the most innocent imaginable young children. 20 first-grade students and 6 educators were killed. This exemplifies aiming down, where the perpetrator preys upon the truly defenseless rather than adult rivals. New York Times, Remembering Sandy Hook, December 14, 2012. Such a monstrous act reflects a twisted logic. If I despise the world enough, I will desecrate its most cherished symbol, its children. It signals a willful assault not just on individuals but on life's foundational hope, mirroring Cain's catastrophic plunge into rebellion, obliterating what is loved by God and cherished by humanity. 4. Child molestation and media avoidance. Paralleling these atrocities, certain child molestation scandals involving media figures demonstrate how depravity can remain concealed within influential institutions. John Griffin, CNN. Sentenced to over 19 years for coercing a minor. He invited a mother and her 9-year-old daughter to his home for sexual training. AP News, ex-CNN producer sentenced for sex crimes with minors, June 20, 2023. James Gordon Meek, ABC News. Investigative producer who pleaded guilty to child sexual abuse material charges. His case underscores how abuse can lurk under a veneer of professional respectability. ABC News, ex-ABC News producer pleads guilty to child pornography charges, May 1, 2023. The initial lack of scrutiny in such cases allows offenses to persist, perpetuating harm and secrecy. Public shock follows, as people grapple with reconciling these heinous crimes with the perpetrator's trusted roles. Yet for those who let their appetites for deviance grow unchecked, crossing each new boundary becomes more justifiable in a warped mind. 5. A bottomless pit of evil. Each time individuals or institutions fail to confront evil early on, the descent continues. Just as Cain's envy grew until it became murder, so do modern perpetrators cultivate darker fantasies until they manifest as unspeakable crimes, whether in school hallways or in hidden online spaces. 6. A warning and a challenge. This grim progression from petty sin to unbridled iniquity requires us to own our resentments, fantasies, and the refusal to examine ourselves. Cain blamed everyone but himself. Likewise, modern abusers, shooters, and predators often style themselves as victims, forcing others to endure their so-called revenge against life's perceived injustices. Ultimately, such acts of evil reflect a stark rebellion against the moral and divine order. Left unchecked, rebellion escalates into targeted assaults on society's dearest values, destroying hope and innocence at their core. Friedrich Nietzsche's will to power. Discarding religious frameworks without an alternate moral foundation can leave a vacuum that raw ambition fills. Perpetrators of evil then rationalize cruelty under a self-made ethic, Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. Everyone harbors latent dark impulses, denying them allows the shadow to gain strength unseen. Confronting evil means recognizing these capacities within ourselves rather than ignoring them naively. Dostoevsky's insights. In Crime and Punishment, those who see themselves as above moral or divine law justify any transgression. Cutting oneself off from absolute right and wrong opens the door to self-righteous brutality. Human beings positioned as gods. Totalitarian rulers demand worship akin to deity, annihilating independent moral codes. Truth becomes whatever the ruler proclaims. Dissenters who cling to transcendent ethics face persecution, simulating or adapting religious rituals. Authoritarian regimes create lavish parades and personality cults, rituals akin to religious observances. True intent is absolute loyalty, not divine reverence. Attacking innocence to showcase authority. Harming children or other vulnerable groups demonstrates that no boundary restrains state power. Fear paralyzes the masses, perpetuating institutionalized cruelty. Religious extremism can manifest in various ways. For instance, a Muslim might label a Christian an idolater for venerating saints or Mary, and then tragically murder him. Yet this same Muslim may visit the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, circling and kissing the Black Stone, which some view as a pre-Islamic pagan remnant. This inconsistency reveals a refusal to see parallels in one's own faith, undermining true introspection. Similarly, a Protestant might dismiss Catholic statues, Marian devotion, or apparitions as mass delusion. However, the same Protestant defends the resurrection based on 500 witnesses, undercutting the idea that multiple testimonies can validate an extraordinary event. This betrays a lack of consistency in dealing with collective spiritual experiences. Moving on to militant atheism, we see Richard Dawkins' unyielding critique of religion. He derides Christian belief, but cannot empirically explain how the universe arises from absolute nothingness. Dawkins enjoys a society shaped by Christian ethics, tolerance, charity, human rights, while calling Christian faith stupid. Notably, he mocked his friend Ayaan Hirsi Ali's life-saving faith, labeling it foolish. While branding God a tyrant, he offers no substantial moral anchor potent enough to sustain compassion in a complex world. Furthermore, militant atheists often fail to provide a coherent alternative. Secular frameworks frequently lack moral depth. Despite championing rationalism, they seldom present purely human-centered philosophies that guarantee empathy and accountability. Historical precedent shows that ideologies lacking transcendent checks turned authoritarian in the 20th century, leading to mass oppression and dehumanization. The destruction of Christian foundations yields moral subjectivity. Removing Christianity's moral and cultural framework has not stopped human beings from seeking something to believe in. Instead, it birthed a vacuum filled by other dogmas, some militant like radical forms of Islam, or even satanic and New Age currents. Freed from traditional guardrails, these movements often exalt subjective truths at the expense of any shared moral accountability. In short, dismantling Christian underpinnings without offering a coherent transcendent alternative has merely unleashed moral confusion, spawning both chaos and newly militant ideologies ready to fill the spiritual emptiness. The core contradiction here is intolerance and narrow vision. Whether a hyper-religious killer or a dogmatic atheist, both refuse to see personal blind spots. Each claims exclusive true faith or true reason, dismissing all else as superstition, yet ignoring inconsistencies within their own worldview. Humility is a Christian virtue. Whether Catholic, Protestant, or another denomination, recognizing flaws in one's own stance is essential. Arrogance is the gateway to nihilism, or worse, to Satanism. Empathy serves as an uncompromising metric. True Christians champion life and dignity, especially for the vulnerable. Any ideology that kills or bullies in the name of personal ideas relinquishes moral legitimacy. Consistency in investigating evidence is also crucial. Christians defending the resurrection through multiple eyewitnesses should be open to examining other collective spiritual phenomena. Atheists proclaiming rational progress owe us genuine frameworks for moral responsibility and community welfare beyond simply negating God. One cannot claim that human evolution alone guarantees moral evolution. No evidence supports such an assumption. From Cain's violent rebellion to modern scenarios, where a Muslim slays a Christian for supposed idolatry, a Protestant dismisses Catholicism as delusional, or an atheist like Richard Dawkins derides faith that rescues a friend from despair, the thread is the same unreflective certainty paired with hostility toward God. We need to stop deceiving ourselves. We pat ourselves on the back, convinced we've created a better world, as though we've evolved past the need for God. We say we're freer, smarter, more moral than ever, but look at the last century. The further we've strayed from God, the darker and more horrific our world has become. The 20th century, supposedly enlightened and progressive, was drenched in blood. World War II alone saw 45 to 50 million dead, including 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust and countless others. In the communist USSR, 20 to 25 million perished through Stalin's purges, gulags, and forced famines. Communist China saw 35 to 50 million die in the Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. North Korea lost 4 to 6 million through war, famine, and political repression. Vietnam, Cambodia under Pol Pot, the French Revolution and other godless regimes resulted in another 10 to 15 million lost. Totals exceed 120 million deaths under ideologies claiming they could replace God. Slavery persists. 50 million people are in modern slavery, more than in ancient Rome. Of these, 1.8 million children are trapped in the sex trade, innocents sold in the darkest corners of our advanced world. Literacy? We're prouder than ever, yet the average high school graduate can barely read beyond a 6th grade level. That's what we call progress, information versus truth. We praise ourselves for having 80% more access to information, yet we equate noise with knowledge, drowning in misinformation on social media. Where once an ignoramus spoke foolishness to a handful of people, now they broadcast it worldwide and we label it content. Hate speech? We pretend to silence hatred with laws, but the truth is, we invented hate speech ourselves and then called it virtue when we censored it. Meanwhile, genuine hatred and suffering multiply. Entertainment, our movies, TV shows, and media have normalized perversity and glorified violence. We celebrate moral decay, insisting it's harmless fun. In reality, we're desensitizing an entire generation. We didn't need devils to teach us depravity, we showcased it ourselves, crowning ourselves gods in our own eyes. Demons looked on, astonished, as we found new ways to destroy each other. So here we stand, congratulating ourselves for evolving beyond God, even as 120+ million died in the name of man-made utopias, 50 million remain enslaved, children get trafficked in every corner of the globe, and violence is sold as entertainment. We've become masters of our own undoing. Satan didn't have to build this world of horror, we did, all while proclaiming our enlightenment. Now we wonder why darkness thrives. Is it not obvious we severed our tie to the moral bedrock? We need God, people, yes, we need Jesus. On our own, the results have been nothing short of catastrophic. Destroying the Christian foundation in the West has not abolished the human impulse to believe in something. Quite the opposite. Once that guiding structure fell, moral subjectivity took its place, leading to confusion and chaos. Far from liberating society, this void has paved the way for militant foreign dogmas. When Western culture discards Christian anchors, radical forms of Islam or other unyielding belief systems rush in, offering absolute moral commands in a world grown morally adrift. It has also invited satanic or New Age movements. Freed from biblical ethics, some gravitate to esoteric, relativistic, or outright occult beliefs that glorify subjective truth at the expense of shared moral duties. In short, removing Christianity's moral framework didn't halt people's desire to worship or find meaning. It merely opened the door to a host of new doctrines, many of them extremist or destructive, that promise certainty where secularism offers only relativity. We stand at a crossroads much like Cain did, Resentful or rebellious impulses can either be tamed by humility and reverence for God, or allowed to grow until they consume us. Western civilization, by discarding the Christian foundation, created a vacuum that has been readily filled by militant dogmas and morally subjective or occult movements, often equally harmful. As the facts laid out show, turning away from God yields horrifying fruit war, trafficking, ignorance, and cruelty. True progress demands we face the truth. We need God, and we need the moral and spiritual wisdom that stems from acknowledging His authority. Absent that higher standard, humanity's capacity for evil and our blind arrogance will continue to wreak devastation on the very world we pretend to exalt.